Hello and welcome to Coffee with Dr. Carla. I'm Dr. Carla. This is Kirsten, and we're so glad you're here with us today. Our goal today is to talk about mental health related issues and hopefully end the stigma surrounding them. So I see you have your sport and exercise psychology shirt on from Minnesota State. So it's a field that is very dynamic and in many ways very young. And a lot of people are not truly aware of what it even means to be in this area. And so I'm just curious, how did you find yourself, in this spot in your life? Like, what was it that brought you to this position to even be curious about sport and exercise psychology, let alone get a master's in it?
Right.
Right.
So I think it all started, I've always been really passionate about mental health, and psychology was really the only subject that got me excited in school. And so I always knew I was going to do psychology, and I wanted to talk about feelings and I wanted to work with people and all that good stuff. It was just a matter of which group of people. And so, throughout my undergrad career, I ran at a small Division I school in Indiana, Butler University. I ran track there, and it was a lot, and I really struggled. And I feel like a lot of the struggles that I had were rooted in my sport experience, or kind of surrounded how I was doing in sport and all that. So
Like your identity was tied up in
yeah,
it? Okay.
and even when I had issues with school, or if I was missing home, or whatever normal college struggles are, it always tied back to track in some way too. And
Okay.
so I think I was really struggling, and I was learning about psychology, wanting to help people that struggled. Like, I felt really passionate about helping people like me, but I don't think I realized until, maybe junior year and later on, that track played such a big role. And so I was like, duh, I'm an athlete, seeking these mental health services and talking to teammates about all these common struggles that we all have. And I never put two and two together that I could be helping athletes. And so I realized, that's an experience I understand. That is clearly, a common experience, since all my teammates and I are talking about it. Why don't I look into that? And so once I did, I realized that it's definitely needed, and there's so much of it that I enjoy learning about and all that good stuff. And so that's where it started, was in my undergrad track career, and just the struggles that I had there. And then once I kind of decided that was the route I wanted to go, it was only reaffirmed when I got to Minnesota and ran as a graduate transfer my fifth year. 2 different programs, completely different states, 2 different divisions, 2 different talent levels, like just vastly different from each other. And it all stood true that we all struggled. And even I, compared to my freshman nervous self versus I've been doing this for 5 years, I still struggled mentally a lot. And so that just kind of let me know I was in the right spot as far as pursuing a job in this career. So
Can you share, because I think it's important. We've talked, previously about how these two programs are so very different, right? And so perhaps can you outline a little bit about, the programs, a little bit more about what makes those two programs different, as far as expectations, perhaps,
yeah.
right? And then how those expectations impacted you. And so when you talk about struggling, like, what does struggling look like? Because
Right.
I mean, let's be honest. We think about struggling. Oh, so maybe you weren't running as well as you could. Well, maybe you were running as well as you could. Maybe you were doing fantastic, talent wise.
Mm-hmm.
But the mental skills part or the mental health part, right? Not mental illness. And we've talked about this a lot on here. Mental health is how well you take care of yourself, right?
Yeah.
So maybe elaborate a little bit more about, those differences and how, did the one school help prepare you for the second, or were they so vastly different that there was no way you could have prepared, or
Right.
So I know other people must be curious because I don't think everybody gets that opportunity. Well, but yeah, to be able to do their athletic career, college career in 2 different places, 2 vastly different places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely wasn't even part of the plan. So, yeah, they've been completely different. And I think that's been wonderful for me as a person, as an athlete, and hopefully professional in this field. So, Butler University is, I mean, in total, maybe like 5 or 6 thousand students, whereas Minnesota State Mankato is like 20,000. So
Okay.
that just university wise, and one is Butler is private, Minnesota State is public, one's in Indianapolis, one's in Mankato, Minnesota, like just very different for me. One was near home, near my significant other. One's far away from everyone. One I was freshly 18. This one I've had 4 years of college experience. So that kind of sets the stage as far as
Sure.
where I was. And then looking into track programs, Butler, a lot of our scholarship went to the distance runners. So I really spent a lot of time just with sprinters. And so we were all non-scholarship. Very early on, like freshman year, it was pretty much if you just enjoyed running and wanted to be there, you could be there. It got more
Oh,
competitive as we
okay.
went on. And the program's doing great now. Like it's only gotten better and better. But I would say earlier on it didn't feel like, an intense Division 1
You weren't
full run.
recruited.
I was recruited, but you know, it was just a different experience. And I think when I would come to Minnesota and say I ran Division 1, I think they had a different idea of what that meant. And I kind of had to say, there was a handful of us in my own sprint group. There was like 5 sprinters. And
Okay.
so it was just different. And, we're in the Big East Conference, which is a competitive conference, but you compare that to SEC or these other Division 1s, and they're just not the same.
Right.
And I am very grateful for my Butler experience. I think it was like the right fit for me, but that's just the reality of it. And so I was able to be successful there. And I mean, you look at bigger schools in their times, and it was not even close. I wasn't running anywhere close to that, but for Butler, I was rather successful.
Okay.
So that just kind of puts some perspective on it. And going to conference was never really, I never really worried about it. I kind of knew I was going to go. I knew I could run on the relay team. Like everything was just kind of, we were just smaller.
The
And
pressure was different.
yeah. And, I certainly struggled when I wasn't running as well. And I
Well,
obviously wanted to do well there too, but it was just a different situation. Whereas when I went to Minnesota State and I initially thought, oh, I'm going down a division, like this will be cake. Then I start looking into their times, and I mean, they are just insanely fast, and their team is huge. They have 5 coaches. I'm used to having one coach juggle like a billion of us.
sure.
So they had
Yeah.
event specific coaches. They had a beautiful indoor facility. I mean, we were running in the basketball field house. We didn't have an indoor track, so it was just kind of funny going from D1. I got a lot of gear. I got to travel. And now I'm going to D2. I got to buy my own stuff, but boy, are there perks there too. So it was just really, really different. And I think the experience there, the pressure was different because I knew I was not coming in the top. I knew these girls were national champions at Division 2, very, very, very fast girls. And so I felt some pressure released because I knew I didn't have to come in and be the best because everyone else was so
Well, you
good.
also weren't going, I mean, starting at Butler, the idea was to run for your 4 years.
Yeah.
Going to Minnesota State, you're running for just a year, right?
Right. And I was, that I think is something I used too was, oh, I'm going here for school. That's why I chose this place. And track wasn't the main focus, but yeah, it was definitely a different kind of pressure
Yeah.
for sure.
So as we kind of, you know, I always find it fascinating, like how people ended up where they ended up.
Hmm.
So as we kind of close out, what might you suggest to somebody who is, looking at, collegiate sports, who is trying to decide, where to go and how to, you know, navigate all
Yeah.
this? What might be a piece of advice that you would give these people?
Yeah. I think the long-winded kind of story of my life and these two different experiences, my main point with that is that no matter where you go and no matter the size of the team, the division, the state you're in, things
Yeah.
like that, no matter what the circumstance, you're going to have highs and lows. There's going to be struggles there. Obviously, I feel passionately about the mental struggles that encompass those experiences. And so just being aware of that and, finding resources wherever you go, having an open mind wherever you go,
Sure.
finding that support that you need, I think is the most important, because even those two very different experiences, that was the commonality. So yeah, find what fits for you and follow what feels right for you, and you'll make the most of whatever that experience is.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So remember, you can change your thoughts, discover your potential, and transform your life by focusing on your overall well being. So until next time, continue working on being the best you possible. Bye now.